Good evening. Allies for almost a century, but tonight a relationship damaged as America slapped huge tariffs on imported Australian steel and aluminium. The Prime Minister today labelling the move unjustified after failing to get an exemption from President Donald Trump.
The lawns of the White House turn into a car yard as the man in charge of efficiency in government spruiks his wares.
Well, I'm going to buy. And I'm going to buy because, number one, it's a great product.
Putting money in Elon Musk's pockets.
I haven't driven a car in a long time.
While he takes it out of Australia's, imposing 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium.
Well, it quite clearly is not a positive step in the relationship. It's as simple as that.
This is a bad day for our country.
The White House confirming the $1 billion in steel and aluminium exported to the US from Australia will be lumped with 25% tariffs, despite a month-long bid for an exemption.
But the America Last globalist era is ending under President Trump. He will no longer allow our country and our workers, our hard-working American families, to be ripped off.
Tariffs and escalating trade tensions are a form of economic self-harm.
Australia won't introduce tariffs of its own, still hopeful of an eventual exemption.
It's obvious that Anthony Albanese and Kevin Rudd have had a shocker. The Prime Minister can't secure a phone call, let alone a meeting with the President of the United States.
Tonight, with the President imposing and removing tariffs on a daily basis, there's concern larger industries like agriculture could be next.
The tariffs are going to be throwing off a lot of money to this country. And we've been ripped off for years by other countries, many, many decades.
Tonight it leaves our producers in a strange position. Tariffs being removed on some goods heading to communist China, but tariffs being added to some goods heading to capitalist America.
People's livelihoods are at risk. There is a human toll to this. It's not about what's happening on the global stage.
Well, this is a disappointing decision. We think it's a bad economic decision. It's bad for our relationship. It's bad for the US ultimately.
Charles Croucher, 9 News.
Let's go to Charles in Canberra. Charles, good evening. Should the Prime Minister have done more?
Pete, well, he could have gone to the United States or secured another phone call, but this seemed set in stone. The Deputy Prime Minister did go to Washington and he went armed with an $800 million cheque that ultimately didn't work. And all the other international leaders that made that journey also have tariffs tonight. Instead, the reality is the Trump administration is overthrowing the principles of free trade that have underpinned growth in prosperity and living standards for generations. Now, usually one of the first moves here in Canberra would be to call in the ambassador, but Donald Trump hasn't appointed one of those yet.
OK, Charles, thank you. Global markets are in a state of panic over Donald Trump's hard line on tariffs. Here's our finance editor, Chris Kohler, on how the fallout is impacting Australians.
Anyone with super has already taken a hit thanks to the US kicking off its trade war. All the funds put our money into shares, and shares are tanking. The ASX tumbled another 1.3% today, and over the last month, it's now lost a whopping 8.8%, mirroring what's happening on Wall Street. And the reason for this is simple. Investors have no idea what's going to happen next. This is the World Trade Policy Uncertainty Index, which, if you can believe it, has been tracked for decades. And now it's gone vertical. The level of uncertainty around trade, according to this, is now twice as high as it was during COVID. When investors feel anxious, they sell, which drives down share prices and share markets. The losses on Wall Street so far amount to more than $1 trillion a week for the last 4 weeks. Australia is simply along for the ride, and so are all of our super balances.
Thank you, Chris.